Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey folks, welcome to Making Data Simple. Al Martin here. I am pleased with the success of the podcast. Originally, it was just a way for me to network, learn, and have some fun. Currently, we have around, I think, 30,000 downloads a month. And hopefully you're getting the benefits that I'm getting as well, that network learning and having fun. The great news for me is that many of our guests, we get to pick and choose now from podcast brokers and people that reach out, and they're great guests. I do work at IBM, though, and I enjoy working at IBM. I'm responsible for technical sales. After a career in support, development, and services, I believe we have a terrific strategy, hybrid cloud and AI. So today, I'm staying close to home. I have invited a gentleman by the name of Roger Premo. He's the GM of strategy and corporate development. He does some portfolio management. He comes to us from Boston Consulting Group. And what I like about Roger that he probably doesn't know is he's got this great strategic Slack channel internal to IBM called Roger That, which is very transparent about our strategy amongst everyone within IBM and our ongoing plans. And Roger, I was recently listening to a discussion where you said, hey, you weren't an initial fan of Roger That, which was kind of surprising to me. That's a great name. I wish I had the name Roger so I could use it. And a great Slack channel. It's fabulous.
If you grew up with the name Roger, people have been saying Roger That to you like your whole life. So I had to get over that. But it's turned out great.
It has turned out great. I mean, and it is a great Slack channel. I think it's more transparency than we've ever had. To start, why don't you explain your background, where you've been, what brings you here, and then we'll go into strategy and some discussion that we have. By the way, I'd like to keep this like strategy at a bar, like we were writing on a napkin or something. Those are the best discussions to have. But give me your background first.
Yeah. So, kind of a varied background. But so I was 20 years ago, I was a software and startup guy in the Silicon Valley. So I'd been through a number of companies during the dot-com bubble and burst, and was a software SaaS guy by training. I did this little 13-year digression into strategy. So I went to business school and landed at Boston Consulting Group doing strategy consulting, and actually found out, I thought it was going to be a training ground and stick around for a couple of years. Ended up staying there for quite a long time, and really learning and enjoying doing strategy work and recognizing how picking the right strategy is really fundamental to getting, a business to execute. In that capacity, I had IBM as a client for a decade. So worked with a lot of the IBM leadership team, was in some of the early work that was I remember doing strategy work. The first time I heard about a client that was deliberately placing workloads across multiple clouds for diversification of risk and innovation, some aha moments along the way. And now that's many years in the rearview mirror around, what later became the hybrid cloud strategy. And then, having worked on that, having worked on a lot of things with Redhat, as well as IBM went through the process of acquiring Redhat, I got a call in March 2020 from Arvind, now the CEO of IBM, to help, do it from this side. So it was a kind of a thrill and honor. It was an opportunity to kind of put my money more where my mouth was on the strategy work. So as you said, Roger That, there's been a lot of what I expected, and then things like Roger That and embracing kind of the broader IBM community and how much engagement and energy we've had around the strategy that have been some unanticipated joys of living on this side of the fence with IBM.
I've always wondered, being part of BCG and getting paid to do strategy, I think would be kind of awesome. How are you evaluated though? I mean, is it client retention?
Well, first of all, strategy is hard, right? It's so I went, the bar is high, and if you're going to have, it's true of anything for our IBM consulting business as well. If you're going to walk into a set of folks that know their business well and actually do work that shapes them and shapes direction in a positive way, and not only does work that should shape them, but it convinces them enough to change direction, the bar is high to get that done. So, there's a tremendous learning curve in that. There's a high expectation on that. But at the end of the day, it is, yes, you are, as you move more senior in your career, you're measured by whether or not you've got clients that are growing with you and keep asking you back. and doing good strategy is hard work. So consistently being asked back is a high bar.
Well, Arvin can be persuasive. I've talked with him many times as well. But why come to IBM? What was the catalyst?
Listen, it wasn't actually. I loved what I did at BCG. It was a great experience, and I'm forever grateful for kind of the opportunity and the personal development I had there. But I'm a tech guy. I live outside of Boston, so I'm on the East Coast. I'd helped with pieces of the strategy along the way, and just the opportunity. I think we'll get to it, but I think we're in this place where IBM's had this great history of living through these technology cycles, but each generation, it's not promised to IBM. Our competition is not trying to cheer for IBM to go through this next cycle. So it's up to us and being kind of hands on the steering wheel to help us jump to that, live through that next great generation for IBM, I think is kind of a historic technology and business challenge that I'm just like thrilled to be a part of. And we'll get to it a bit in the strategy, but I also believe we had the ingredients to make that possible, where, I think before we started making some of these strategic shifts, there wasn't as clear a path for how we do that.
I concur with you, and we will get to that. How much time do you spend between shaping IBM strategy, corporate development, or portfolio management? Is it all strategy and then some corporate development? Is it equal thirds?
Well, first off, it would be hard to separate any hour in the day and say it was any one of those things, right? They're so interlinked. So we do a lot of work on, periodically we revisit the market strategy, the context overall. We also do strategy projects within the individual parts of IBM or across pieces of IBM to accelerate our achievement of the strategy. We do portfolio management to kind of look at the quantitative investment allocation, returns, market positioning. And obviously we do the inorganic side of that. How do we acquire, divest, shape the portfolio to better execute that? Both, portfolio management, largely organically, acquisitions, the inorganic side. I'd say it's probably, 40, 20, if you put it in those three buckets of strategy, acquisitions and portfolio, simply because portfolio is a much more quantitative thing that you got to let the data dictate it. The building acquisition cases and progressing those through the pipeline and then doing the core strategy work, those just have a lot more day-to-day executional efforts on it. But they all, like I said, if you looked at any one piece of work, you could probably argue that it's portfolio, strategy, and inorganic simultaneously, because at the end of the day, when we say like, I want to improve my performance in a particular market, how I do that organically, how I might do that inorganically is almost always part of the thought process, because at the end of the day, we'll build the strategies, but you do something in the portfolio to execute against it.
You came to IBM, 2020? Yeah,
started May 2020.
So you come in and you say, hey, they're on the right path. This is going to take, I'm just going to have to refine this strategy. No, I need to rebuild this strategy. No, I just need to tweak this strategy. Where was your mind frame?
A couple things. I'll just share one little personal story. It is funny, So it was March 2020, I got the call from Arvin. We had just entered the first pandemic thing. So first off, jumped into the job kind of back. Remember when we said, hey, we're all just going to go back, work from home for a few weeks, and then we'll be back in the office. So lived through, it was all a lot of simultaneous variables there. But no, I had a sincere belief in the strategy we were on coming in. The strategic North Star of hybrid cloud and AI. And I just think, my old boss, Jim Whitehurst, who I spent a lot of time with from Redhat, he had a great way to describe it. A great strategy creates value for your customers and as a way for you as a vendor to capture value. And so we know from a bunch of work that a hybrid cloud architecture is just a better way for companies to drive digital innovation. So it creates value for them. That's unambiguous. We're still building the awareness of that in the market, but that is just technical truth. And that would be true if you went with IBM and Red Hat, or if you went with one of our competitors on that architecture. It's just a better architecture for the future of how companies will innovate. And then, with what we have in Red Hat and how we've transformed the IBM portfolio, obviously Red Hat is in a leadership position on the open source layer that is the core of that hybrid cloud. And then how we've transformed our portfolio to build upon that, to have the consulting skills to implement that, to have the infrastructure that can run that layer and bring the differentiation of our infrastructure to life in that open source layer. We have a portfolio that's constructed for us to be able to deliver and capture value on that strategy. So most of that, from being a consultant working closely with IBM, those were my going in understanding and beliefs. And so I knew we weren't going to pick another North Star. It was about how do we accelerate our progress, because we're not if you look at when we bought Red Hat, the term hybrid cloud was kind of viewed a little bit more as like an interim step on the way to the public cloud. If you remember, containers and Kubernetes in particular was one of a few different competing standards for what is that software layer. Now, practically every company in the world has adopted containers and Kubernetes as what they build on. So I knew I had a sense that we were on the right path, and then everything is about accelerating it. But like some of that technical trends and understanding of hybrid cloud, I also think the market's moved in our direction over that time, like over the last several years, which has been great. It meant that the bets we were placing at that point in time, a lot of them are coming to life.
I think, so let's dive into that on the hybrid cloud piece. To your point, I spent a lot of time working with clients around a hybrid cloud strategy. We did it very purposeful, as you mentioned. But originally, I think there was some kind of inclination that while we have a cloud, AWS doing really well with the cloud, Azure doing well with their cloud,
Yep.
Or Microsoft, I should say, with Azure. The question is, well, IBM, you're just going hybrid because that suits your interest. How would you answer that?
First off, I think part of a hybrid cloud strategy. So I lead, we call it executive advocate, but I'm the lead executive in charge of our AWS relationship. So first off, we will collaborate with them. So it's not an either or. And hybrid cloud means that, we deeply collaborate with AWS to help bring that to life, because a market leading cloud, so many times if you say hybrid cloud, the public cloud component of that is often AWS or Azure, like you said. But it gets to this reality. So maybe back to my consulting background, done a lot of like process reengineering work. And time after time, when you do process reengineering work, the biggest lever to get performance out of an organization is standardization. Common ways of doing things, common practices, so that everybody in the organization knows how to execute. And so if you take that metaphor down to digital innovation, if I've got different development methodologies, different tool chains, different services in every place that I want to innovate, that's going to slow down innovation, because different skills we need to build, different execution operations, the inconsistencies between different technical platforms create executional risk, they create security risk. There's real value in standardization. And that's maybe something that's like kind of deeply ingrained in me from my strategy background. And knowing that that value, if you pick a common software layer in which to do digital innovation, I can look a client in the eyes and say, this is not just an IBM statement. This is just solid, good advice for you. And like I said, if you picked one of our competitors to build that common software layer, that would be good for you too, because it will in the long run, it will make everything you want to accomplish across your call it digital innovation agenda or tech-led strategies. It will make them be faster, better, more secure, more efficient. That is just, it's true. But it is to your point, I think the term hybrid cloud, there's a lot of folks that went down, pick your hyperscale cloud. They went down a path that was only on one of those. And so it does require a bit of a rethink. And any architecture that's if we insist on technical purity, that is the downfall of many architectures. There'll be places where we build things that are custom, that only run in AWS or only run in Azure, or, pick your technology standard. I accept that will happen. But where it's feasible to create that standardization layer, our clients will see business benefits from that. I
think part of the challenge you mentioned earlier, I think originally, a lot of the clients considered hybrid cloud as maybe temporary.
Yeah.
Now, we had a very different thought processes. Part of it is we had the capability in the portfolio to perform a hybrid cloud day one. And I think we were pretty clear on that strategy. And the cool thing is now almost all companies now are talking about hybrid cloud and are coming back. Is it because, I won't mention any names, but if you pick your company of choice, your maybe data warehousing company of choice, I mean, it's easy for them to say, move everything. Then they have your data, you're in the cloud. They don't have the capability unless they're going to partner with a lot of other companies to be able to do the hybrid cloud. They're going to send message, and some of them are still sending it today that, look, no, it's cloud or bust, move your data. Do you find that challenge? Are you still combating that when you're meeting with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say before I get to that, just market facts. If you think of hybrid cloud, we did just recently on my team do this kind of outside in market compare. And if you look at that understanding of hybrid cloud, what has happened? Well, first of all, there's multi-cloud. Most companies now are also saying, I'm going to run across multiple clouds. And that creates the same kind of complexity you would have had in or similar kind of complexities you would have had in an on-prem and one public cloud. We also have edge technologies, right? So those are industry by industry. There's different forms of how edge will happen, but they want to do digital innovation. And that inherently isn't going to be in a big public cloud data center. So that's another way that call it heterogeneous tech, call it hybrid cloud, but there's heterogeneity of where they need to do this. And then the other thing that's happened is as a service, obviously clients have been adopting as a service for a while, but they're recognizing that the data from as a service has to connect to other pieces of their processes. And so they're not treating as a service applications as like a sidecar that's separate from their digital innovation agenda. It has to fit in. So that hybridity or that heterogeneity continues to grow because if it's edge or SaaS or whatever, the business demands it, right? It is a business necessity and it's forcing that heterogeneity. And then if you get to the data layer, absolutely, like in that massive heterogeneous world, again, I think there are a bunch of kind of your big cloud data warehouses that they say, I will solve your data analytics and AI problems. Step one, take all of your data and put it into my cloud data warehouse. And and by the way, there have been, IBM probably did this in our data warehouse business. That has been an answer a lot of warehousing companies have had through time. Uh-huh. And it's expensive, it's impractical. And in a world where you're always spinning up more data sources and there's live data that, isn't going to make it to the warehouse by the time that you actually need to analyze it, like it's just not a practical answer. Now, with that said, there are big places where the cloud data warehouse and what we can do doing warehousing on top of cloud object storage is like the default storage location. We'll head there, but it can't be the sole answer to your data problems. And I think at the data layer, similar to what we have on hybrid cloud, I think heterogeneous data has a very similar problem statement, which is how do you tackle that? How do we not pretend that the heterogeneity is going to go away? How do we embrace the heterogeneity and practically address it? That's what we're doing in our portfolio around, on the AI side, but it's our data fabric strategy, which is saying where you can standardize for sure, but you need something that's more intelligent than that, because if making your heterogeneity go away is your pre-step to make analytics and AI really work for you, you'll just never get there.
Do you think there's a day where we will be all cloud, the industry? Or you could be like Anderson Horowitz. Several years ago, they said the cloud is dead, and they were talking about the edge, like we're moving the next step is the edge. So before you even get the cloud, everybody gets there. They're already back to the edge, and you're distributed again.
Yeah, I think Andreessen had a great publication last year, if you're just picking on those guys for a second, the $1 trillion cloud paradox. Like to start on cloud, not starting on cloud is foolish. Finishing on cloud is foolish, depending on what scale level you get. And they go through the Dropbox case study. So on some level, and I think, listen, edge technologies, maybe one of the cloud vendors will provide some of that tech, but at some level, like edge technologies are going to be about having computing living proximate to where business executes. If that's manufacturing, if that's a retail location, whatever, and it has to operate with, a thunderstorm knocks out the connection to the internet, the business has to continue to function. We're seeing this, there's always been these like distributed, centralized kind of movements in computing overall. And I think we're seeing a move towards more distributed. That's inherently not a giant hyperscale cloud data center. That market will continue to grow, but there's these new workloads coming online. So I don't think we'll ever land in an all cloud world, but cloud will continue to grow and be important and be a big vector of innovation for a long time to come. It will not be this, like I said, architectural purity is like a losing argument, and we will never have architectural purity on any one tech architecture, because it's like, this is a fit for purpose world. You have to land the technology in the place that delivers the results for the business. And that may be about physical location. It may be different silicon. It may be about different capabilities a particular vendor offers. I think we got to recognize we're in a fit for purpose world and innovate with that in mind.
Well, everything you said right there kind of plays into hybrid cloud, does it not? I mean, right into that strategy.
Yeah. If you follow my Slack channel, I mean, there is, what I love about our strategies. We have to describe it. We have to execute against it, but there is technical and business truth behind it. Like it's not, we're trying to pitch like a fabricated story. There's inherent truth and good advice in that. And the confidence we can have in talking to our clients and say, yes, the heterogeneity exists. This is a better path. And that's why we have this hybrid cloud and AI strategy. Like, it is inherently, what we just discussed is the underpinning truths that have taken us to this strategy.
Why is Red Hat and containerization so essential to our strategy? I mean, there's some people out there who say, I just stick with a hypervisor. You don't need the containerization.
I'd say a few things. First of all, there were commercial vendors along the way, IBM among them, that tried to pursue this notion of a software layer that could run across environments to provide that standardization. And it's a big ambition, right? We got this gift, right? 2014, Google open source Kubernetes, and they gave us this starting point that was mature enough that a lot of the open source community rallied around it. So first of all, with that kind of starting point Google gave us, and just the volume of innovation that comes from the open source community, it could have been any other standard, frankly. It just, we got one that was good enough, and then the acceleration it got because the open source community really rallied around it has made it technically feasible to execute that. And that happens to be containers and Kubernetes. And of course, there's lots of the way you can put a single service inside a container, the way you can handle loads. And there's a lot of merits to why that works, the way you share resources across containers, that there's a lot of computer science answers to that as well. But, fundamentally, we've proved that bold vision that says I can have a common way to innovate across different environments is now feasible. And it's thanks to that starting point plus open source. Then you get to why Red Hat. With that broad open source community, there's lots of ways that a particular open source project can go wrong. So somebody that's scanning, integrating, securing, supporting open source so that you actually can bet your business on it. Red Hat has kind of been the clear leader in that for, decades now. So betting on open source, I think, is very clear. Betting on open source containers and Kubernetes is a technical direction that is working. Betting on Red Hat as a vendor that does that well in a way that companies can bet the business on is, clearly a good direction. And then the last thing I'd say, just to link it back to the data conversation, if you look at how we're still at this world where we're just barely getting to AI inferencing, outnumbering training workloads in AI, the way most inferencing is done in the wild is inside a container, because you can wrap that algorithm inside a container so that you get a repeat. If you just put a naked algorithm onto a different environment, you can put the same data in and get a different data out. That encapsulation and container means that your AI gets more repeatable. So it's not just something that is in the hybrid cloud layer. The executional operation of AI is in containers and Kubernetes as well. So it links that technical architecture transcends kind of all of our portfolio. And again, it's like technical truth. Like others are doing that long before, we declared, Red Hat as our target standard for hybrid cloud.
One thing when I'm talking to customers, if I'm going to oversimplify our strategy, I'll say, look, we're open, and you're right. Red Hat gives us that we can run anywhere. But the beauty of it, you sum that up, you can modernize now. It's not about moving bits and bytes to get where you need to get. It's about leaving them where they reside, leaving data where it resides if it works for you. Or, if you need to clean up some data or whatever, you can move it into a warehouse or otherwise. But you can modernize this minute. Whereas a lot of other competitors are saying, oh, you got to move. And once you move, this is a big, big endeavor. Now, one comment I get back that I'd like your comment on is usually there's agreement. I can debate pretty well, but there's agreement. And then they say, yeah, but let's be honest, Al, you are asking me to really change my infrastructure around a containerization platform, which is a pretty big investment on my end. So even though you talk about open and stuff, there's a little bit of lock in there, my friend. How would you answer that? I've got my own answer, but how would you answer it?
I'd say first off, I think anytime you pick a technical standard, you have some degree of, I don't like the word lock in, but you've made choices, and it's about picking an architecture you're going to build to. So, and if it was a company that was like writing their own platform or distributing their own open source, or if it was, a commercial vendor, like it was VMware for virtualization or Oracle for databases or AWS for cloud services, at some level, you're making a choice and you have to live with that choice. I would say though, for open source, if for whatever reason, IBM and Red Hat turned out to be a bad vendor, because it's got common open source underpinnings, the switching cost, if you were to move platforms, is much lower than it would be if you're on a completely proprietary stack that bears no resemblance to anybody's others. So the commonality of open source does reduce some of the switching costs. But I'll tell you, if you look at, the way that's why I'm super proud of what Red Hat's done through the years. We don't see switching away from Red Hat Linux at scale. It's because they've been good, reliable, reasonable vendors for decades now. So to some extent, I look at the Red Hat track record and say, who's been a vendor, have you had a better OS vendor than Red Hat in the history of your business? And the answer is typically no. So why would you expect anything different in this era from our friends at Red Hat? And so a lot of time that gets them comfortable, but at the same time, I understand the question simply because it is a massive choice. It's the future technical architecture of your business, and that should have some real diligence in it.
Well, I think at the end of the day, you're making a choice on containerization, right? And we just feel like we have the best containerization strategy in Red Hat. And where we do continue to differentiate is going back to the design point of being open. Literally, and we have clients that can do this and do this. If you want to use your own database, it doesn't have to be an IBM database, use it. Now, we like our database, but it's very open. And because that's the nature of the containerized platform, that's also a reason why we've kept Red Hat distinct so that we hold true to, that openness as a design.
I'd also just chime in one other thing, which is, I just think there's been a seismic shift in the role of open source, right? If you think of the Linux, MySQL eras, a lot of times that was a open source equivalent functionality of something that was available commercially. Now, open source is fundamentally where innovation happens. And so just betting on that, betting on millions of developers to power innovation faster than the finite number of developers that you'd have from any commercial vendor, it's just a good bet. And then you say, listen, do I want to support it myself? Do I want to work with Red Hat? Do I want to work with another vendor? I think over time you figure out, man, supporting open source is tough work. I don't want my development team spending a bunch of their time there. And then it's Red Hat or somebody else. But, at the end of the day, I think if you think about what's going on in the open source community, how much it powers innovation, the choice of containers and Kubernetes are simply, one instance of where the open source community has picked a standard, and, betting against those millions of developers is just a bad bet.
Yeah, it's great answer. Let me take a step back. Maybe you've already answered this, but I I'm going to ask it anyway. Let's say you're traveling on business and you find yourself, you're at the bar by yourself. Because I know, I got to say you're traveling on business because I knew you wouldn't go to the bar by yourself otherwise. So you're traveling on business. You've got a CEO that's traveling. You find that he's in the tech world as well. He runs a tech company. And he finds that you're from IBM. And you're sitting down there. You each having a little bit of a dinner and a drink. And he says, why IBM? What's your best bar pitch on why IBM?
So I do two things. So first I'd talk about our hybrid cloud strategy that we just went through and say, do you have complexity in your IT environment? Do you have do you find that you have different skill populations you have hired? Are you having challenges with the rate and pace of innovation in your organization? And it's 100% yes to that answer. Do you want to get more innovation outcome? And say, we have a platform that drives that standardization with modern techniques, with that innovation tailwind of the open source community. And that's what we built our business around. And that typically, gets a lot of response. And so we've bet our business around it. And we think you should too. And then you go, why make that bet with IBM? And you talk about the track record of Redhat and open source. We talk about the track record of IBM. These are bets. I mean, the lock-in question is a really fair one because we're making a decade plus long bet for the future of our clients. And you say, are you going to bet on the company that's helped generations of clients through that, has like shifted society and technology? Or are you going to make a decades long bet on a company that's not yet a decade old? And I just think we've been that partner to so many. If it's like the moon mission, modern banking, like the early days of the US Census going from physical to being tracked with data, there's so many generations of big bets that clients have made with us that have paid off. I just think we are the partner that you can bet your business with and know we'll be at your side, even if it wasn't our fault. There's so many places where IBM's kind of rallied to help our clients when their business is on the line. So I think we're the vendor that you can bet on, and we have the track record to show it. As
expected, you're in strategy. You tackled it head on.
By the way, hey Al, I'm taking this from our clients too. I mean, they recognize, I probably should have started with this. We've gone from this world, right? This other thing that's changed. We've gone from this world, like IT, the department, the IT is dead era. Like we're so far past that. Technology is picking winners and losers in businesses. So senior leadership teams, CEOs understand that like when they make technology choices, they are betting their business. And so we see a bunch of CEOs tell us that like IBM, I am suspicious of some of those other guys. Like either they don't have the track record, they don't have I'm worried that they're going to jump into my industry and compete with me. So we have a lot of our clients telling us like we should be louder and prouder about that track record because they see it in us. They look at us and say, shoot, if I've got somebody that I've got to be in the tent with for the next 10, 20 years, 30 years, if you're talking about certain industries where you're going to build industrial equipment that's going to be in the field for decades to come, they look at IBM as kind of the only vendor that even hits the criteria for somebody they place that bet with.
We are not good, to your point, at self-promotion. We need to do a little bit better. I mean, just a little bit would be okay. One challenge I'd have on all of that is I hear exactly what you're saying, but I still find that, I'm meeting with the C-suite and you'd think this is odd, but it's still happening as far as I'm concerned, that they often talk about their strategy being like a data fabric. I often have to say, for what? What are you trying to achieve ultimately in the outcome? Yeah. I mean, that's not exactly sexy, just data. In fact, it's a lot of work. But if you're going to like modernize your call centers and use like customer care through Watson Assistant, different stuff like that. Oh, great outcome. Let's do it. I'll show you how this works. Well, but a lot of times I still say they start with, hey, I just need a data fabric. And I really got to push for that outcome. Maybe you're not seeing that as much. I still think there's a problem.
No, Al, I'm with you. So we are, from the technology side of our business, we are a horizontal technology business, right? And that inherently means that somebody's got to do something on top or with that technology to create the outcome. Deploying just containers in Kubernetes standalone doesn't do anything. And that's why, if you think of our portfolio strategy, that's why consulting, we've kept IBM Consulting. We divested or we spun out our our infrastructure managed services business, which is now called Kyndryl. But we kept consulting because they do the custom work that implements and creates things on top of that platform. And we've invested in them so they have the hybrid skills, the OpenShift, the Redhat skills to make that real in the world. We're leaning into our software portfolio to build capabilities on top of that. But again, it's data fabric. It's often horizontal technologies that then you have to put the analytical or AI use case on top of. And then that's also why we've invested in our ecosystem. So we've put a ton of effort, like we're just a very different company now of investing in our ecosystem, because in a world where, a hybrid cloud architecture creates so much more value, there's so much more to share with our ecosystem. So if it's software vendors, SaaS vendors that are building applications capabilities on top, we need those. That's why we're doubling down on the ecosystem, is so that you have an answer, hybrid cloud platform or data fabric or automation. You have to have the answer for what purpose? How does it create value in the enterprise? And that ultimately is in something that touches a workflow that drives the business forward.
That's great. Great. Do you have time for 2 more quick questions?
I believe I do.
All right. 2 more quick questions. And thank you for that. Here's number 1. I know you love all your children when you're representing a portfolio like IBM, but is there one, either technology or something that excites you more than anything else? I mean, is it quantum? I mean, what really, you can pick another one tomorrow, so nobody's upset. But what's your number? What really excites you?
Well, I'll do 2. Since you mentioned my kids, we have been doing like the VR. We got the Oculus headset, and I do think it is really interesting to the experiences you can create with that. And just seeing their eyes light up when we put them into whatever, my daughter ride in a virtual roller coaster or something. But we've been doing some IBM meetings in the metaverse. I think that will be interesting to watch. And then, quantum, just because you mentioned it, quantum is fascinating. We are 1 century since quantum theory was proposed, and we have running proof of it being real inside of IBM. And quantum, and I'm pretty proud of what I believe our team is the one that's ahead on making it real for humanity. And there are so many problems in the world. Like you mentioned, so I've got a son that has a genetic condition that I'm part of the foundation working on. And the researchers that are actually modeling how we create therapies, they're going to be using quantum computing, because at the end of the day, that kind of modeling, quantum physics matters to figuring out how molecules interact with each other, like electron entanglement, all these things that traditional computing struggles to do. Quantum computing is going to unlock so many things for humanity. It'll unlock things in batteries and solar panels and energy, in chemistry, biotechnology, therapeutics. Anyway, it's going to take a while to emerge, but it is profound. It will advance humanity. And I'm just, metaverse collaboration would be pretty cool. But I don't know that we'll say it moves humanity forward. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic on that.
No,
but the quantum
I was hoping the metaverse was going to move my football experience forward. I always envisioned me sitting on the 50-yard line. I'm surprised the NFL hasn't done that yet. I'd pay some big bucks to sit on my couch and be on the 50-yard line of a Super Bowl or something.
I saw the pilot for the NBA. You can sit on the floor, but then I'd say, why not sit at the free throw line or sit on the field?
That would be cool too. So how do you distill all this information? I'm always studying, and I'm doing podcasts like this because I want to get information from experts like you and stuff. I'm always trying to cheat the system to find more ways to get information faster, because there's only so many hours in the day. What do you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one is, it could be anything. I've got on my phone, I've been using Flipboard for a decade. So I have curated my feeds and things such that my Flipboard does tend to serve up to me. And it's you'd have to put all the feeds in and the historical, which ones I click, so it's tuned for you. But it just does a good job of serving up information to me. So that's been a source. I love, to your point, internally at IBM, and I think anybody that's at a tech company, some of these debates we have internally, just lighting up posing those questions or starting the conversation with a bright group of IBMers for me has been an incredible learning. Cause I mean, Al, you've seen it. I get a ton out of that. And then, yeah, I'm a podcaster. I really do love software engineering radio. So I throw those on, especially on a long run. I like to throw those on. I feel like in my day-to-day life, I get so many like texts, Slacks, all these things that distract you.
Yeah.
It's actually when I go for a run is when I actually get to focus, listen, and learn. And I over focus because I'm trying to not focus on how tired my legs are. I'm trying to focus on something else to distract me.
Look, I'm even a audiobook reader for the same reason. Then I can get multiple things done at once. I can go run, and it also encourages you to run because I need to finish this book.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
100%. Is there any like reading material that you say though you've got to view? You know, if you're in this business, you got to be looking at the Wall Street Journal every day. You got to be looking at TechCrunch. Anything that you say is.
I do TechCrunch, Business Insider. But for me, and then I just read, I do read The Economist cover to cover every week. I think just understanding the world we operate in it's not a technologist, but like it's an understanding of politics and business broadly that allows you to kind of see trends coming, or, whenever I'm in front of a client, I feel like I don't really have an industry that I haven't at least have some peripheral understanding of it from just reading. So for me, it's The Economist.
I know I'm stretching this, but I'll be as quick as possible. What's a day in the life look like for you? Do you get up like at 5:30? Do you work late?
Yeah. If I do a good day, it's probably, so I'm, I sincerely believe like, mind and body are both super important. So I got a CrossFit gym near my house that I got a bunch of built relationships, love the place. So I'm there for the 6 a.m. workout, back home, kids off to school, at my desk with a coffee in hand, 7:45. Lately I've been good on carving out like a good chunk of time in the morning to make sure that I'm like reading, emailing, like totally caught up before I jump into meetings. And then I'm back and forth in a bunch of conversations for the bulk of the day. And then back with the family for dinner. And then probably, switching on, I probably shouldn't do this, but, switching on work for a little bit longer every evening to just kind of do a little bit more catch up, a little bit more pre-reading ahead of the next day.
We all do it. It's what I call work-life integration. Just hopefully you get more of the life integration than the work sometimes.
I wake up every day. I'll tell you, I wake up every day pretty excited about just all of those things. I love going and ripping it in the workout. I love helping move IBM forward and kind of I love the tech industry. So like all those ideas, and then obviously love the family and one obvious silver lining of the pandemic. I'm getting back to the office more often, but a silver lining of the pandemic has been, when I'm done with work, I'm 10 seconds from seeing the kiddos, and it's a great, there's definitely silver linings to all this complexity over the last few years.
One I got to slip in here because it's a current event. Were you lobbying for the CHIPS Act?
My team worked on some of the IBM proposal on it, which actually I think will hopefully help shape some of the overall consortium and how the work is done. Why is it so important to you? Why is that so important to IBM? Well, I do believe semiconductors are frankly like a competitive front for the Western economy. Like it really is. Semiconductor innovation drives innovation on so many fronts, from all the way from like defense intelligence to automotive to airlines, et cetera. So being there all the way from, real kind of from business trade wars all the way to like real kind of national security things, it matters. And then I just think what is really interesting for IBM is that I think the structure of the semiconductor industry has changed, where you got three big semiconductor manufacturers, but the difficulty of the innovation layer around what the next generation of semiconductors has been is so expensive, so complex, so difficult that we can't do it three times across all those vendors. So IBM with a consortium in Albany, New York, amazingly, of all places in the world, Albany, New York is where the most brilliant semiconductor research in the world occurs. And it's with a consortium of partners of Samsung, Tokyo Electric, ASML. I'm leaving out a bunch, but the industry structure has changed such that that innovation layer really happens. It happens in Europe a little bit too, but the manufacturers will execute and the innovation will happen in Albany. And IBM's been instrumental in orchestrating that innovation layer on both, the semiconductor processes, manufacturing scalability, such that, a Samsung or others can pick up that process and implement whatever it is, 2 nanometer semiconductors. You can actually build those, economically and keep powering, all this innovation we continue to see. So, and semiconductors, it is frankly, some of the most profound technology magic that happens in any industry anywhere is in what we do with, and I can't even do it justice, but how we bounce some UV light off a piece of molten tin that has a wavelength longer than 2 nanometers and etches a 2 nanometer etching on a semiconductor. I mean, it's a miracle of humanity what is happening there. And so, yes, us continuing to invest in that because we've recognized political boundaries have changed. We can't be beholden to that in other parts of the world. It's a super important thing. And I think that the fact that we are able to get it through in this political environment is just an indication of what broad importance it has, because it did get bipartisan support, in a world in which practically nothing else has bipartisan support. So it's a big deal.
That's an understatement. Look, I think, IBM, we've been around for over 100 years. Sometimes we can be characterized, likely by competitors, as legacy. But man, look at the stuff you're talking about. Isn't it great to be at IBM? I mean, we're out in front. There's big business. There's struggles I deal with every day. Too many emails that I have to get through. But at the end of the day, we're out front in every space of this. I mean, it's really a lot of fun.
I will say, just on the semiconductor, quantum, things like that, I feel super lucky as a head of strategy, right, for IBM. Hybrid cloud and AI, I know today's strategy, and I see path on there, quantum, semis, I see the next strategies coming. I don't think there's many other strategy leaders in any industry that we got a ton of work to do. I don't want to dismiss how much work we have ahead to really realize those, but we got clarity, and it's frankly a luxury that I don't think many other strategy leaders in the world have. So it's just, I do pinch myself every day with the work I get to do.
Well, now I see why you switched. I've got it now.
Yeah. Hey, we've answered that question the long way.
So where can folks find you? Where can they find IBM strategy? And do you want to say a word on the foundation you mentioned?
Sure. I'll say, so for IBMers, if you haven't been there, Roger_that on Slack. Your questions on the strategy are always welcome, and a good solid percentage of them I tackle myself, but often the community jumps in and nails them before I even realized there was a Slack message. My LinkedIn is a great place to dig in, so you can follow me on LinkedIn if for anybody outside of IBM, talk about the strategy there and also tackle questions occasionally also. And yeah, I am a member of 2 nonprofit boards. One is called the Majira Project. And so we've been working on basically helping to accelerate minority-owned or diverse founder businesses, because we think part of closing the diversity gap in our country is closing the economic opportunity gap. So we're pretty proud of now, I think it's over 100 different companies that we've helped scale and thousands of jobs created. And, diverse founders tend to hire and develop diverse future leaders. So we're really proud of what we've done at the Majira Project. I welcome anybody to jump in on that. And then I mentioned the Families SCN2A Foundation. So SCN2A is a gene that is really instrumental it's a sodium channel, but it's part of a number of epilepsy and autism disorders, and it bears a lot of similarities to a lot of other sodium channels and neurotransmitters that are part of epilepsy and autism remain diseases that are largely not well treated and not well understood. So I'm cautiously optimistic with the brilliant work of Families SCN2A, but many others that are tackling, in the genetic era, are actually able to understand the target they're going after. I'm excited about the potential for, the patients and families that deal with these, like my family does, on a daily basis, giving them a better path for the long run, and a lot of optimism on what's to come for them.
Well, maybe it's a reason. So somebody like you is championing this on a foundation you mentioned. So good for you. I've got a daughter that's got hearing issues. And so I've got heretohelpkc.org, if anybody's listening, that we promote as well. Hey, thank you for being here. Strategy needed you. You're doing a great job. And I appreciate your candid dialogue, Roger. Great.
All right. Al, I look forward to hearing the pings coming from this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's just going to give you more work. Everybody listening, thank you. As always, I would be remiss in not saying so. Hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, we will see you on the podcast. Later, folks.